30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
Hi,
My name's JC McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small, host and producer of All About You. And All About You is one of two different programs that I have the pleasure of hosting and producing every single week live at AccessTV.org studios. All About You is a show that's designed to ask the guests the hard questions. No, excuse me. All About You is a show that's designed to let you know about the person's life and background. This is the biographical show. And this morning, I have a very popular dynamite guest who is no stranger locally here in the greater Hartford area, but also well known and popular nationally. The guest this morning has many different professional backgrounds, from TV personality to author, running a major agency. The guest, again, is the president and CEO of the St. Anne's Family Services, located in Los Angeles, California, no other than Lorna Little. Good morning, Lorna. How are you doing?
Good morning. Good morning. Glad to be here, Jonathan. And, always excited to do anything connected with, you and Stan McCauley, of course. We go way back.
Okay, I know that for sure. And it's a pleasure to have you on, Lorna. Lorna, could you let people know a little bit? Well, actually, where were you born and raised at? This is the biographical show again.
I was actually born in London, England,
Uh huh.
and but I was raised in Hartford, Connecticut, and then moved to West Hartford, Connecticut in my kind of adult life, my husband and I. But I was born in London, lived there for about 5 years or so, and then moved to Hartford, Connecticut, and went to Annie Fisher School and know a lot of people in the community from that time. Went to middle school at Kennelly, and then went to Hartford Public High School.
Well, Lorna, you have no memory of London, England for your first 5 years? Or do you have any
Oh
memories?
yeah, oh yeah, I
Okay.
have memories.
Uh,
It's funny. I mean, we develop memories. Sometimes people can't recall just when, but if you remember foods, I remember foods. I remember preschool. I do have some memories of London and certain things. It's so funny because I remember um, eating like a pudding and a rhubarb pie. And, when I went back, I was like, I had a taste for certain things. And those food memories stick with you as well.
do you remember as a child boarding the plane and coming to the U.S.?
I actually do
uh,
because that's when they used to give you wings and as kids and certain things. Yeah,
uh,
I do. I recall that.
that's an excellent memory, Lorna. So, Lorna, as a child growing up in Hartford, what was it like for you at that particular lifespan?
It was interesting because when we initially moved here, we lived in on Westmont Parkway where my uncle and my family lived. And at that time, it was great because, I was raised as an only child at the time. And so it was like I had kind of live-in cousins, so that was Rosie and Elaine. And that was wonderful. And then we soon after, my family, parents bought their own house and we lived on Harrison Place in Hartford, right off of Woodland and Homestead in that area. And so growing up in Hartford it was great. It was a diverse city. As I said, I went to Annie Fisher School. I remember literally, we walked to school. We were too close for the school bus. And I have a lot of friends to this day. Doug McClory was in my classes since I was in elementary school. There are people that, I have known since that time frame. that obviously I'm in Los Angeles now, but we formed a lot of good friendships at Annie Fisher.
Now, which junior high and high school did you go to when you was living here in the greater Hartford area?
So it's an interesting story. So I was supposed to go to Fox Middle School, and Dr. David Monroe, who's still in education, to this day, um, you know, yes, we had, busing and all these things going on, but I remember that there were several children, young people in our class that he said, I really would like them to have another opportunity. At the time, honestly, I guess there was just a lot happening at the school. He felt that, his words, that we were talented and gifted and wanted us to have a different school experience. And so he talked with my parents. He also, I guess, talked with the other children, kids' parents. There's about four of us. And they had us go to Kennelly Middle School at the time. Kennelly was on the South End. They had a really great reputation and for great education and, just the environment. And so I ended up going to Kennelly. I really didn't want to because, of course, all my friends were going to Fox Middle School. And so I was kind of disappointed, but I know it was for the best. It was a great education and, good opportunity to gain those skills. And then we actually ended up moving right at the end of eighth grade, right before ninth grade, from kind of the north end of Hartford to, kind of on a southwest area.
Hmm.
And so I ended up going to Hartford High.
Okay, now what was Hartford High like when you went to Hartford High?
Oxford High was good. I mean, I was a cheerleader there for many years. I was on student council. I did had a variety of activities. I made some really good friends there. With school, you always have the highs and the lows. You had the things that, the fights and the little things that happen, but that happens in any environment. I wasn't fighting, let me be real clear.
Hmm.
Not me, but just in the environment, and high school is high school, and we actually had reunions since. And at the time, I was kind of coordinating some of those high school reunions, but it was a great experience.
Now, did people recognize you as a media personality and your talk show that you used to host and produce, Lorna's Corner? But before we even get to that, what type of music or sound or entertainment scene that you was highly interested in that made you want to pursue establishing your own weekly or daily type of talk show called Lorna's Corner before we get to that stage?
Yeah. So it's interesting because people do focus on the music because we did evolve in that space. But what really and truly interested me, and as Stan, knows because I'm quite sure he's heard me say this and he was there at the beginning, is that I always had an interest in our community.
Mm.
I always had an interest in uplifting and being connected with our community. There was a lot going on in our community at the time. There were a lot of stop the violence efforts. There were just so many things happening. And so I was very socially conscious. I wanted to talk to our community about how we could, um, uplift ourselves and folks that we want to impact, especially our youth. And what happened was, I remember Eddie Jordan from K&D, one of my senior projects for college, because I was getting my bachelor's degree in communication and psychology, because I've always had those two loves. I love the communication side, and I also love the psychology and social work side. Those were my loves. And so I really wanted to be a television journalist. At least that's what I thought, throughout my college career, my college experience. And so I remember going to K&D and talking to Mr. Eddie Jordan, and I had him come over and do an interview. And I also had Gail King come over, do an interview with several other individuals where we talked about issues and what was going on in the community, and I interviewed them. But I remember after doing that, it was like, okay, I want to do a talk show. But also, what I recognized is the first time that I started to incorporate music into it, I got even a larger response. And so the first time I had an interview where I included KRS-One, and that was the artist of the time, I saw that there was such feedback, the viewership, and people saying I saw it. And so for me at that point in time, I still wanted to do the education, have the conversations, talking about young people getting jobs, talking about reducing, crime, all those things. But I knew that if I had some folks on, and I did love music, so let me be clear, I've always loved music,
Mm.
but I recognized that having those people on the show would allow me to be able to give the messages, but also the entertainment side. So then I started saying we were doing edutainment, education and entertainment. And so that's where it kind of evolved into then videos and some of the other things, which was fun as well. But for me, the foundation was always trying to elevate and uplift and have conversations with our community.
And Lorna, when you was doing Lorna's Corner, did your time span run across the same time when you had Teen Summit on BET, Yo MTV Raps? Um, I think it was a few other shows I'm not thinking of
Yeah,
offhand. But was
some
you operating at that same time span?
some were some
Mm-hmm.
Yo MTV Raps definitely. Some of the other shows I came on before
Mm-hmm.
them, and so we were definitely doing something groundbreaking because I say that to this day, all those other shows that were out had big budgets. They were on major stations,
Mm-hmm.
and not to say that what we were on wasn't major, but Stan can tell you that we didn't have that type of budget to do a production. We worked with great community partners, Hartford Public Access, Hartford Community, which became Hartford Community Television. And, we put a lot of our own resources into it. When we did, shoots out in the community, we invested in our own equipment and things like that. But the fact that we were able to have the same guests asked some of the same but some different questions because I had my own perspective. I was a fan of the music, so me asking questions that kind of everyone wants to know um, was a lot of fun. But having that show, it some of the shows came after, some were before, and to have people come to our region and have their management and have their talent people say, we want to be on your show. Of course, in the beginning, we were reaching out all the time. We were trying to get these folks on, and I had to establish credibility.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you, Lorna Little? You want to do an interview with LL Cool J, or you want to do an interview with Public Enemy, or Ruby D and Ozzie Davis, and all these people. Once that credibility was established, then they also started reaching out to us. I remember when MC Light came down to the station, and we did an interview with her there, and she's still doing amazing things beyond just the music. She's the voiceover for so many broadcast shows, movies. She just put out a new record, Very Positive Woman. So there's so many people that have grown and evolved over the time frame, just like I've grown and evolved, but it all started here.
And I think that's what makes it so impressive, the fact that you were competing, if you want to use the word competition, with New York in the bigger budgets, the bigger media markets, and you're still able to hold your own and get the same big name guests like LL Cool J, Queen Latifah, Gail King. I mean, Gail King was locally, but still, the fact that you was able to get A-list types of guests on Lorna's Corner, I think sometimes people may not remember this in this particular era that we're in now. And you did this before you had, well, the internet might have been around, but certainly not social
It wasn't,
media.
no.
It wasn't
The
around.
best Yeah, no, I don't mean to interrupt you,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
I'm sorry if you can finish your question. But I definitely was going to say we didn't have cell phones that you
Mm.
could just put up and say, let me do a quick interview, or we didn't have things that could transmit that easily. I mean, we were editing on 3/4 inch tape for those pneumatic tapes for the people who understand. It wasn't like now when you can, we got there eventually, but
Uh,
digital editing, I mean, if you edited a show, you spent hours editing the show, and if it was done, it was done, and if there was a mistake, there was a mistake, unless you went and did it all over again. There wasn't this kind of cut and paste and being able to do that. So there was a lot of time invested in producing that show, and a lot of effort. I was always thankful to Stan and the station and all the people who helped support it, and all the amazing people in Hartford who still are. Some are still there who were those crew member volunteers. Ronnie Williams is one that she lives in California as well. But there are so many people, Edmund, and Ann, and there are Scene, and I'm having Broderick. There were so many people over the years, Ortista, uh, and I'm gonna forget someone and be in lots of trouble, but I'm thankful for everybody who came and was a part. Lance Hanley, so many people that were a part of making the production, because it's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
Stay and do that for that long, and always balancing that with also having full-time responsibilities as well. So I'm used to having, almost two full-time roles.
Right. And I guess to some degree, you don't have no regrets that you came along in that particular era, as before you had the internet, before you had the cell phone, before you had Zoom, because you just your opinion on the type of era that you came along with in media. Do you look back at it as just say it was the time that I came along, or was it anything about that era that you kind of wish you probably would have came along a little bit later? I just want to get your opinion on that level as well.
I believe, our path is our path. God has a plan for our lives. And, it's interesting. One of the things now that I live in Los Angeles, I think about, I wouldn't want to do it different, but it would have been probably a different result moving out there earlier with what I did, because now I see how many people have interest in work in that space. I see now how, people were in film school there, and making a path. And, what I was doing then, you know, is big now on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Now people are starting shows and podcasts, and they're monetizing it on a major way. And had I been in an environment maybe like that, continuing on that path. But I also think about the fact there are times when I think about, I had both parallel careers and interests. So as I talk about having the psychology and social work side and the helping people, because that's always been an interest, being in the helping profession. But then there's this other side where, the media, and I love talking to people and hearing their stories. And if I may have gone in that other way, the media focused solely, I don't know if I would have been fulfilling my purpose in terms of working with young mothers and parents and families in the community. And so I want to feel as if, and I do feel as if this is how it's supposed to go and how it was supposed to end up.
Mm-hmm.
But I am aware that there may have been ways to continue to move in the media direction had I been sometimes in different spaces, in different
Exactly.
areas where there was more access to some of the things that would be necessary, funding for support for some of the work we were doing. But I am where I'm supposed to be, because not too late.
I tell that exactly. Now, this part about your life, when you found out that your natural birth parents, I guess you were adopted, and you didn't find this out until a later stage in life. How did this all come about that you realized at one point that the parents who basically were raising you were not your biological parents?
So the irony of all things, we were planning a trip, a vacation to a family reunion. So our cousins and our family who are from Jamaica, many of them, they wanted to take a trip to Jamaica. I hadn't had my passport renewed in years because I hadn't traveled out of the country. Wanted to renew that and needed a copy of the birth certificates because I let it expire, and basically was applying for the passport for our family reunion. And what happened was, when I sent over to get a copy of my birth certificate in order to do that, this is how this all kind of unraveled and the secret became revealed. And that's where it started.
So again, when you say when you were renewing your passport and you were planning a family trip to Jamaica, that's when it all came about that you realized that you were adopted. Just want to clarify this.
Yeah. So let me give you a little more detail just for clarity. In order to get the birth certificate, you have to send in for certain bits of information. I was born in London, so that's what complicated. It's not like I was going to, City Hall in Hartford to get it. So I had to write for that information, and what they sent me when I finally got the information was a certificate of adoption
Mm-hmm.
instead of the actual birth certificate, which I actually didn't initially believe. I was like, what is this? Why are they sending me a certificate of adoption? I'm not adopted. And as I always say, there's nothing wrong with adoption or being adopted. It's a loving process. For me, it was being that I was totally unaware of any of that. And so getting that letter in the mail, not believing it for a little while until I went to speak to my mother. And finally, my husband was like, "You got to ask her. I know you think this is wrong," because I was going to wait to contact the people in London and like, what's going on? Why'd you send me this information? There has to be an error. But then I did approach her that night, and you know, she just kind of let out this kind of slump in this chair that she was in, this kind of sigh, and she said, "It's out now." And at that point, you know, the secret that probably they would have taken to their grave was out. My dad had already passed away; he was already dead.
Mm. But you met your natural birth mother, and then you established some type of communication with her. I'm just trying to figure out what was the next phase after you realized that you were adopted, and then how did this change your whole life with your adoptive mother that you were raised by, if you don't mind me asking?
So, yes, I'll answer yes. I did eventually connect and find my birth mother, but you have to understand. You talk about the internet, and you talk about where things were at the time.
Mm-hmm.
The internet wasn't what it was when I found out, and so when they send you your certificate of adoption, you don't have information on there. It's not like it says, "Oh, this is who your birth mother is."
Mm-hmm.
So I had to be a real sleuth and really do a lot of research because I didn't know if she was alive, where she was. I didn't have any details.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to first, before you get to that point, you have to just deal with the emotional piece of learning all of that, learning, what you've understood and what you've known for many years is not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to kind of deal with that first. But then you go from that to saying, okay, how can I find out? What can I do? Um, and that's where it started, and I started searching, I started reaching out, I made phone calls. I didn't have the accurate name. I had to get her accurate information. My mom, who raised me, didn't have a lot of details because you got to remember, now we're talking 30 years ago. This is not like something that happened, a couple of years ago or even a couple of months ago where everyone's memory is really clear.
Mm-hmm.
It was a situation where, I had to do a lot of backtracking. So that's how that process started. And, the Lord was on my side with wanting me to find this out because I tell people I was looking for a needle in a haystack.
Right.
Remember, I don't have information. I don't have an address. I don't know. The internet is not what it, is now. There wasn't the 23andMe DNA, all of that. That wasn't present at that time in that way. And so for me to even find her was really miraculous.
Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes, Lorna, when people, kids are growing up and they are adoptive or they have been adopted, every now and then they'll look at their parents and they may question. And I don't want to put you in any uncomfortable situation by addressing this, but they may look at their birth mother and realize something about the bond or way she looks don't remind me that this is my
Hmm.
mother. Did any other um, suspicion came about you growing up as a child, becoming adult, that this person may not be my natural birth mother or my natural birth father? Or was that never any type of suspicion in your growing up in your adult life?
I mean, you're right. In many situations, people have that. where someone doesn't look like, or everyone's short and they're tall, they
Mm-hmm.
have red hair, everybody else has blonde hair, black hair, and those, but I didn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
And the uniqueness of my situation is more so, I remember, my parents being older because they were kind of older parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything that I felt that may have been different, I kind of attributed more to age, um, having me in, like around 40, or, it didn't seem like that was the difference. Now, we had sometimes, uh, you know, I don't want to say conflictual relationships, but at times her and I were kind of, but teens and their parents are like that. You know what I mean? So I just attributed it to her being strict and more old fashioned. Now, you have to realize part of my story, which also probably gives a little bit of a difference, is that, I mean, my father who raised me was actually my biological father.
Okay. All right. He was your
So
biologist.
people would always say that I resemble him,
Mm-hmm.
that I look like him. So it was just like, oh, I looked more like my dad. And so there wasn't really that issue per se.
So
So
it
I
was.
never know. I never had a thought. Never had a thought.
So actually, it was just your mother that was the adoptive, not your father. I mean, well, your father was your biological father. Because I was under the impression that both of your parents were adopted. But you're saying now, or you just clarifying that it was only your father that was your naturally birth parent. And
Yeah.
okay, just want to
Yeah.
clarify that part.
But yes. And the thing about it is what people need to understand, because sometimes when people hear that, they're like, oh, so that was, no, it's still a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't know this, and it's even, people are more accustomed to it being the other way,
Mm-hmm.
that people are often always finding out, oh, my dad that I thought was my dad wasn't my dad. That happens all the time.
Right.
It doesn't happen often that your mother, the person who gave birth to you, that you thought, that doesn't happen a lot. So it's a very different scenario. And then with my father being dead, there was no way to really ask him or get answers from him. So all I had was my mom. And so that felt like, even though it was not both parents, it felt that way because there weren't answers.
Mm-hmm. Now, did this shape your life any differently, or did you look at life, or did you pursue anything any differently once you found all of this out, that your natural birth mother didn't raise you, and did the relationship with your adoptive birth mother, I mean your adoptive mother, did that change
Mhm.
anything, or was everything still the same? I mean, what was the whole process last after all of this was found out?
Well, it did change. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the information changed. I mean, it kind of rocked my world in a sense of, if you think about it, who wouldn't experience, if you've lived 30 years with an understanding, your core understanding of your foundation, of your family, and your beliefs of who you are, and now all of a sudden a piece of paper comes in the mail and tells you that all of that is not accurate,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that you didn't have family, doesn't mean that you didn't have love and all of that. But someone is basically saying that all of your is no longer true, then you felt like people lied to you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you feel like people lied to you, that's the basis of trust. So, although, of course, I came to a place where, I understood what happened and it was done out of love, and there was fear of me knowing, would that change the relationship? Would that change how we maneuvered with each other? And I know why it was done. At that time, of course, I was frustrated and angry because not only did I find this information out, on top of it, now I have to go and figure out and try to find this person. And then I'm wondering, which all individuals, whether they're in foster care, whether they've been adopted, you have this question of, okay, so why didn't I stay with you, or why was I not able to be in your care? what did you think? Was there love? All those things. I mean, that's a natural human reaction.
Hmm.
So of course it made a difference. My adoptive mother and I, which I just call her my mom because that's all I knew all those years. And just as a point of clarification and just for knowledge, it's called late discovery adoption, a LDA.
Hmm.
People, late discovery adoptee, people who don't find out until late in their life that they're adopted. It's called late discovery adoption, and so that changes things because you've had this whole life, and then all of a sudden someone tells you something very different. So it changed, but we healed our relationship. We moved forward. We were at peace with the whole process after evolved, and I found my birth mother. They actually connected and you know um, actually talked and spent some time together, which was really healing for my adoptive mom and my birth mom.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, everything seemed like it worked out fine. And like say, maybe in life, everything happens for a reason, as you stated earlier about the career path of coming along in the era when you didn't have the type of technology that you have now, and you weren't in the market that you currently exist now. And that leads me to the next question. What was it like when you found out that you were gonna be running and be a president of the St. Anne's Family Service, this job opportunity in Los Angeles? And did you pursue this, or did this just happen to come about towards them approaching you? How did this whole opportunity come
So
about?
yeah, so no, it it wasn't like I pursued it.
Hmm.
um it, I would have never known about this job. A colleague actually in Hartford, who is now a judge, sent me the job search information. There was a major national search that was being done, and she sent me and said that, Lorna, this is your job. And I was like, I looked at it and looked at the email, and I sent it back to her, and I was like, this looks amazing. But this can't be my job because it's in Los Angeles, California.
Hmm.
So it can't be. Um, and kind of disregarded it at that point. I did share it with my husband, just, mentioned it to him. Look at, oh, wow, look, this is what I'm doing here, but it's on a larger scale, but it's in Los Angeles. And we really didn't think much more of it. And then, like a couple of weeks later, less than that maybe, I was going through my email, and people believe what they want to believe or how things happen, but I'm going to tell you that somehow that email was back on the top of my email, and it was like I was forced to look at it. And so I looked at it and I was like, wait a minute, this is supposed to be buried down. Anyway, I'm looking at the email, and I'm a believer. I believe in the Lord. I just, the Holy Spirit. And it was very clear to me that I was being moved to state, or to move on this, because I heard clearly, who gave you the authority to decide where your blessings may lie.
Hmm.
It was basically, this is not necessarily just your choice. There are things you're supposed to do. There are places you're supposed to go and live out your purpose, and you just cutting it off. You just taking authority. I'm not going. This isn't where I'm supposed to go.
Oh.
And at that moment, it was so clear to me. I was like, okay, Lord, I'm going to be obedient. And I filled out the forms, talked to the people, sent the information. And at that point, of course, I talked to my husband first, and we agreed, and we said, well, what can it hurt? We fill it out, we put the information in, and you haven't applied for a job in over, I don't know, 15 years, because I had been already working for so long there. I wasn't looking for a job at the time. And we said, we'll just see how it goes, and we'll go from there. And each time it was, okay, you're going to the next round. It was a detailed process. You're working with a search firm. they're trying to vet, and they're talking to people in Atlanta. They're talking to people all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
You have people with PhDs applying. I find all this out after. You have doctors. You have all kinds of people applying for this role. And that's why I say, what God has for you, He has for you. What's for you is for you, because each time it would get closer and closer, like, okay. And then they flew me out. And then they flew my husband out. And then it was like, I'm doing a presentation, and they're like, unanimously, you've been selected for this role. And it was like, then we had to look at each other like, it's real, like, not having a plan really clearly defined for moving and all of that. So it was a beautiful um opportunity. It was somewhat of a surprise in the sense of, it's not that I wasn't qualified or any of that, but it was a big role.
Mm-hmm.
It's what I've been doing, but on a much larger scale in the West Coast. And, I have my connections here. I have a beautiful community. I know all my folks who are in my career path. I have a lot of friends here. So it was funny. It was one of my friends, Carmen Fuentes, and it clicked with me one day. She said, "You're really brave. I'd be scared to be at this age and this point in life, and to move across the country and leave everything and everyone." And it was when she said that, I was like, "Oh wow, that is what I'm doing, right?"
Uh-huh.
But faith over fear. My friends, they got me a faith over fear shirt, and that was all three of us. Were wearing that, and that's what I flew to California with. I had that on. I had faith over fear on my shirt, and that was my whole mantra, because I was trusting that this opportunity and this blessing didn't come to me by chance or
Mm-hmm.
happenstance. There was a reason and a purpose that I was supposed to go there. And it was going to be a blessing for our family and me, but it was also going to be a blessing for those that we work on behalf of, and serve and provide in the community. And that, for me, I've seen that. I've seen the evidence of that. And that's been wonderful.
Now, Lorna, so far in Los Angeles, I mean, it seems like I see you with Oprah Winfrey, a lot of A-list celebrities. I don't want to say this is almost like a dream job, because you have to say that for yourself or speak for yourself on that level. But, the type of work that you've been doing, and clinical, social work, is that kind of what you, a licensed clinical
Yeah.
social work? Okay. So you've been, like you say, almost in a dual career. You've done media, you've run a talk show for a number of years, author. But this seems like the ultimate dream job. You're in the second largest media market. When you arrived to Los Angeles, what was your whole impression, now that I'm in a whole different city and I'm at a higher, different level position? Did you kind of have to pinch yourself and saying, I've kind of reached the pinnacle? Or what was your whole impression when you got to that point?
Well, I wouldn't say that I've reached a pinnacle. What I was is, first of all, I was grateful.
Mm-hmm.
I was also recognizing that, like your question earlier about, could I have done things differently, or maybe, any second thoughts or second guessing. It reminded me of, once again, what's supposed to be is supposed to be. What's going to happen is going to happen, because I could have had this opportunity to go and be the CEO of a large nonprofit anywhere in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And the opportunity came to me to be the CEO of this amazing nonprofit, working with children and families, providing housing, providing mental health services. We have about 500 to 600 children in our Head Start programs throughout LA. Um, Workforce development, all of these things could have been in the middle of Ohio, could have been anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm in Los Angeles, and where I am in Los Angeles is like downtown LA region, LA proper. Not, when people talk about LA, it's so big that you could be way out, far from where everything is happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm right where everything is happening. Initially when I moved there, I lived not far from the Staples Center. I'm a little further out now, but not much. And now it's not even called the Staples Center anymore.
Right.
Crypto.com. But anyway, so, you know, being there at this time, and you talk about seeing me with celebrities, it kind of melded my world that I had before when I was doing the program, in that some of these same people who I would interview and connect with, many of them have moved from the East Coast and live on the West Coast now.
Hmm.
Obviously, the weather is the big draw, but being able to have greater opportunities to kind of have that work in that past connect.
Hmm.
Even having some of the amazing people who come to St. Anne's, bringing them, there, and some had attended prior, but some new ones have come on board. I mean, it's amazing to have wonderful supporters who we've had, like Michael Ealy and his wife Katira Rafiqzada. I mean, people see Michael Ealy on movies, and they see him at St. Anne's Family Services donating and supporting. You know, People see Aloe Black singing and having music, and he's there at Christmas supporting. The people who make Fear of God clothing, having them there at Christmas and the holidays helping support families. I mean, so it's merging both the worlds in that way. We're going to get ready to or honor like several people for all the work they've done, and one of them is Ryan Bathay Brown. And she, as an actress, I don't know if you ever seen The First Wives Club. Her and Jill Scott, they played in that. She's someone that has helped at St. Anne. So we're not honoring people who have not been connected or a part of, like her, along with some of the women from Jack and Jill, um, made a beautiful reading room, and she's continued to support and volunteer. So there's connections in that way, and then there's also connections because some of the people, like I said, I've met and either developed a relationship when we started doing the show here, and now many of them are living there. So it is a blessing to have those connections. And a lot of times people will ask me things like, you should start Lorna's Corner again in that way. I said, well, you know what? um I don't know if that's the piece. I love to talk to people. I love to interview people. I love that part. That was always a passion of mine. But obviously, even with the music, we initially focused on hip hop. It evolved, started changing some. We kind of changed and said we would do Positively Lorna's Corner because we wanted to focus on, all the positive elements of much music, R&B, hip hop. We did some reggae, some gospel, but for me at this point, I want to talk about, fun things, but also deeper issues, things that impact the community, how we can help, how we can ensure that people are living their best lives. One of the things I formed is, a little guidance. And a little guidance is the name of our nonprofit, kind of our business, I should say, really. And what we are doing is the book, Mom's the Word, my book was under a little guidance. When I go out and do speaking engagements, large speaking engagements, it's under a little guidance, because I think that is another area that I've always been interested in and fascinating is how can I support, coach, engage, help people get to the next level. And I've been doing that for folks, even that I'm in LA, even in Hartford, continuing people call me, talk to me, get guidance. But really, a little guidance is a play on our name, but it's also the work we're doing and where we're going. And so I will still, if I get opportunities, talk to people. I remember when I went out there and I saw Will I Am and the Black Eyed Peas. And what was so exciting about that is I was like, do you remember what? And he was like, of course, we met. We were sitting at a table. He remembered like every detail of our conversation and interview. And so here he was there doing, they were doing a concert to support mental health services and access and just wellness. And that's what I want to see. I want to see the merging of the artists, which is what I started with, being in there to help people. And that's why we always had words of wisdom at the end of every show. Yeah, we talked about the fun stuff, their music, and maybe showed a video. But at the end of the day, the words of wisdom that they gave to our community was important for me, because that was also a way of me doing social work and sharing, because I've had kids that are adults now in the region, say, I remember when Biggie said, don't sell drugs. If this is something that you did, if you weren't trying to feed your family, don't be a follower. They listen to that more than they listen to things that family and parents and teachers said. So those words of wisdom made a difference in a lot of young people's lives. You meet people where they're at and you reach them where they're at. And the show did that. It merged the two, I think, very well. And when there were music and things that I wasn't really feeling, or the music started changing and getting a little bit more negative, I wasn't interested in it anymore. There was the wonderful, beautiful element of hip hop, which has been amazingly celebrated for these, 50 years. But there were parts of it that I wasn't as interested in promoting because people weren't forcing me to do that. I made a choice to do that. And so,
Lorna, as we ending this particular segment, I mean, that sounds like an excellent way to kind of end it. Usually, I like to ask the guests towards the end of the show if there's any last things about their life or what they're doing that they would like for people to know. And I'm still going to ask you that question. But again, it was a pleasure, very insightful, informative. You're a real down to earth person. I mean, I can pick up that vibe. I mean, you never forget your hometown. You always mention, even during this program, your hometown, Hartford, and what it was like growing up. So you're a real down to earth, humble person, and God is blessing you in tremendous ways. But again, is there any last things that you would like for people to know about yourself or what you're currently planning before we end this segment? Feel free to do so.
what I'll say is that I think it's very important that we go after and seek and try anything that we're interested in doing. And I always say positive things. um, Too many times people say that you either have to this career or you can't do that. People would look now and say, well, wait a minute, I'm confused. You're an author? Wait a minute, but I thought you had did media work. But wait a minute, you're a licensed clinical social worker and and you continue to work with children and families. Like, there's this thing that we have to be put into a box, and we can only try and achieve certain things. I've tried art. I had an art show. I've tried, photography. I do as a photographer, although I haven't been using my professional camera for a while. I used to know how to edit. Stan knows that Alonzo and I used to joke about who was the better editor. Um, but everything that you're interested in, why not try to see if you like it or would be good at? Sometimes you find out I'm not that great or I'm not that interested. But we have to stop, especially with our children. Let them experience different opportunities, because maybe they want to be an artist today, they want to be something else tomorrow. But we put people in a box, and as adults, we should be free to seek our peace and enjoy different versions of ourselves, whether it's just for fun as a hobby or as a career. Sometimes careers come out of hobbies. I just think that it's important to be fulfilled, take care of wellness, be well for ourselves. We talk about self-care. Self-care means taking some time to pursue opportunities. There's some brilliant people in our community who have never had an opportunity to explore things, because obviously we got to go to work, we have to pay bills and all of that, but we need to find opportunities to explore all of us, all of ourselves, to be able to see where there may be a gap that can be filled, a void, and that will bring us joy and peace. And continue to do the best for others. Don't always just think about ourselves. We have to think about our community. We have to think about how we can really walk the walk, and just be the best version of ourselves. I say I'm a servant leader. I'm a CEO and all of that, but I am a servant leader first, because I'm there for a purpose, and I'm not better than anybody around me. We're all working towards making people have an opportunity for optimal living.
Lorna, those words are well taken. They're well encouraging, and God bless you with your next journey in life, whatever it particularly is going to be. Excuse me, it was a pleasure to have you on All About You, to find out some things about your life that I and other people may not be aware of. And it was our pleasure here at AccessTV.org Network to have you as a special guest this morning on All About You.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you to, accesstv.org. Stan and Naisha, and, your work. I'm always going to be thankful for what Stan does for the community, and what you're doing in terms of, when you get to know about people, we break down barriers and bridges in our community, in the world. is filled with too many barriers and differences and strife right now. So we need to look at how we can get to know each other better, to understand each other, so we can have some peace in our world.
Thank you again, and it's our pleasure, and look forward to possibly having you back on in the very near future. Possibly talking about another segment, hopefully on Face to Face. But if not, then you have a
Uh,
very blessed day and keep the
Take
faith.
care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, this is Jonathan Small. I just enjoyed hosting this edition of All About You with the special guests, President CEO of the St. Anne's Family Services, Lorna Little. It was a very interesting, informative, delightful conversation that I had the privilege of having interviewed with Lorna, and definitely look forward to working towards another show next week. I have a confirmed guest for Face to Face. Gonna be talking hopefully about the movie Cooley High. Had a actor that had a role in this movie, and just gotta fine tune the details, make sure everything goes about the way I would like for the interview to go. And until I see you again, for people out there, have a very blessed day and keep the faith. Thank you.